Welcome to the Inner Light Companion, a space to personalize your spiritual journey with the 12 sacred intimacies. I'm Tamara Ridge, your companion and guide. Each episode of this podcast explores a facet of connection with the divine, yourself, others, and the world, offering clear markers to recognize, gentle practices to try, and stories that help you grow what's strong and tend to what needs to grow. Move at your pace and use the name for the holy that fits your heart. This isn't therapy or advice. It's a meeting of souls, a place to listen deeply, ask real questions, and remember the wisdom already within you. I invite you now to take a breath. Let's begin. It's really interesting because today's episode is about having freedom in our everyday choices. And you've heard the phrase that when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. And I've had some very profound experiences that I'm going to share with you today that all relate to freedom of choice. So for 59 years, I thought I was making my own choices. What clothes to wear, what food to eat, how to spend my time, whether to actually buy someone a gift, when to rest, or more accurately, when not to rest because there was always more service to give. But a few weeks ago, something happened that made me realize I wasn't making my own choices. My dysregulated nervous system was making survival decisions for me. And I didn't even know that difference until my body finally reset. Let me tell you what I mean. A few weeks ago, I worked 3 12-hour days in a row building an email course for my business. I was excited, focused, completely absorbed in the work. But my body was screaming. My blood glucose, which I monitor because I'm pre-diabetic, spiked to 135 overnight and stayed there all night. That scared me. I already knew that my pre-diabetes was stress-related, but I didn't realize how very sensitive it was to even fun overwork until a few weeks ago. My body was telling me, you are in survival mode. You're dysregulated. This is not sustainable. And of course, I just wanted to ignore it until things were done. But the impact was unavoidable. So here's what's interesting. A few days before those 3 12-hour days, I'd had a conversation with my partner of 6.5 years, the one I've told you who introduced me to Kriya Yoga. And I told him that instead of continuing to complain that he was not emotionally available, I said, I'm going to stop complaining and I'm going to seek God more. So I did. I turned toward the divine instead of turning toward my partner for something that I thought he couldn't give me. And then, after those 3 exhausting days, I made a different decision that I'd never made before because I was afraid because of my blood sugar. What was the decision? I decided to listen to my body. I laid down on my bed during the daytime, and my dog, without prompting, came and she kind of laid down right on top of me. And the weight of her body on my chest triggered something that I'd never experienced before. It was a parasympathetic event. I started crying. It wasn't sadness. It wasn't grief. They felt really neutral. It was just tears. And then I started shaking. My body was trembling, releasing, and I recognized it. I felt it unwinding. This was a nervous system release. It wasn't emotional. It was not a breakdown. It was not anxiety. It was not panic. It was my body finally letting go of decades of stored survival activation. And I recognized it while it was happening. So instead of stopping it, instead of pushing through it, instead of telling myself to get up and get back to work, I leaned in and I let it happen. And after that first release, I started doing things I'd never prioritized before because I saw this as an opportunity to allow my body to dip into some very deep healing. So I started lying on the floor every night before bed and practicing diaphragmatic breathing so I could sleep better. I started doing really light weights in the morning, like 5 minutes, followed by 20 minutes of yoga, not to perform, not to achieve, but with a focus of helping my body regulate. I noticed that I was in a new space. And as I started entering this new space, I wanted to do everything that I could to solidify it so that it became my new normal. So I also did intentional diaphragmatic breathing after the exercise to help my body stay calm, followed by Kriya meditation. I also started using the infrared sauna to help my body release what it had been holding, to help improve insulin resistance, to help my mitochondria come back on board. And over the next 4 days, it was only 4 days, my body went through the most profound transformation that I have ever experienced. Let me tell you what changed, because this isn't just a spiritual story, although it is a spiritual story. This is measurable, documented, whole system transformation. The first change was glucose stability. My blood sugar flattened out. Post-meal spikes disappeared. Like my body stopped reacting to food. I love eating these bran muffins. And when you have prediabetes, you can eat 30 grams of carbs for breakfast. At least that's what my limit is. And those muffins are 22 grams, but they used to spike my blood sugar. No, they don't. So my body stopped reacting to food with blood sugar spikes. I also developed overnight stability where my blood sugar so far has settled somewhere between 118 and 136, and the normal range, you want it to be under 140. And my average glucose continues to go down to normal, non-pre-diabetic levels without medication. But because my body no longer feels threatened, it stopped reacting to food as if it were a threat. What this means is that my stress hormones, cortisol, adrenaline, dropped. My insulin sensitivity improved. My body has moved out of survival mode for the first time in 59 years. Understand that. Hunger and satiety have changed. So for the first time in my life, for the first time in 59 years, I felt hunger clearly. Not the dysregulated, I'm starving and panicking hunger, the kind that I'd always known, but clear, tolerable, informative hunger that told me what my body needed. Hear this. I had always looked around at other people and wondered how they knew what their bodies were telling them about hunger signals and what was wrong with me. I never understood why I couldn't figure that out. But now my body is finally talking to me and I can hear it. Within those 4 days, I also felt fatigue without guilt. So when you start to unwind your nervous system and healing starts coming on board, you can experience periods of very deep fatigue. And in those 4 days, I felt deep tiredness in my legs. I needed daytime naps. And instead of feeling guilty, instead of pushing through or telling myself that I was lazy, I rested. It was the first time in my life I ever understood how vitally important rest is. And my body thanked me by regulating my blood sugar like someone who's healthy, not someone who's on the brink of diabetes. I also experienced sleep changes. Now, yes, there were some nights that I had trouble falling asleep, which is what happens when your body moves out of alarm state and into relaxation. But I still woke up rested. My body's resilience came online for the first time in my life. I also experienced emotional resilience. It's the most shocking thing, right? So a few days into this reset, my partner and I had a stressful conversation, the kind of conversation that used to spike my blood sugar and send me into a fight or flight response for days. But now my glucose didn't move, and the intensity of the conversation and the feelings of dysregulation that used to come on board when he was dysregulated never happened. The stress did not register in my body as a threat. So I was able to stay present. I stayed calm. My nervous system stayed regulated. And when I think about the work that I've done with people as a therapist over the years, realizing how much I was doing while my own nervous system was dysregulated, and how much further people can go when they're safe in their bodies. I had never experienced being able to stay present, calm, and regulated during relationship stress in my entire life. And soon, I also saw that the lack of emotional availability that I thought my partner had was actually me being so stuck in my own sympathetic responses that I could never soften toward him. After those 4 days, my body has softened. And because of my openness and my dropped defenses, we are enjoying more closeness than I was capable of before. And my social engagement system has come on board. I've also, in my life, always sort of criticized myself, thinking, why is it that I can't just talk to people? It's funny that I'm a therapist. I can talk to people in the frame of my work relationship with them. But socially, I've always felt very awkward. But this happened also. A neighbor who's ignored me for years stopped me on the street, and we stood there and had a 30-minute conversation that was easy and relaxed. And at the end of the conversation, he said, well, it was really nice talking to you. Thanks for the conversation. New for me, but wonderful. Someone else, a neighbor, stopped their car and said, you look wonderful. I don't know what you're doing, but you're doing something right. My nervous system is broadcasting safety, and people can feel that. As I sit with these changes, I realize something. It breaks my heart, and at the same time, it's completely revolutionary and joyful. I have been dysregulated my entire life. From childhood trauma, from religious control, from abusive marriages, from decades, right? Almost 6 decades of ignoring my body's signals. That dysregulation, that chronic survival activation has been making my decisions for me. I haven't been making decisions from my soul, not from my wisdom, not from my authentic desires, but from my terrified nervous system. Makes me sad to think about, but I'm also excited to live the next 30 years. Let's talk about church for a minute. Let's talk about our clothing decisions and how they are survival focused, not self-expressive. So for decades, I wore the temple garments. That meant that my clothing choices were dictated by covenant, not by what made me feel beautiful or comfortable. And after I left the church, I started getting tattoos and more piercings. I wore what I wanted. But even then, I didn't realize my clothing choices had been survival decisions, compliance to avoid rejection, conformity to avoid shame. My food decisions, let's talk about those. Eating from fear, eating in fear, not genuine hunger. I did not know what real hunger felt like until 4 days ago. For 59 years, I ate in fear. Fear of being judged. Fear of offending someone by not eating what they served. Fear of my body's signals because I'd been taught to override them. Fear that what I ate would somehow harm me. The word of wisdom controlled what I could consume. By the way, after I left the church, I said God has to exist because coffee is amazing. That means that God can't be Mormon because coffee is incredible. God made coffee for sure. But back to the church. Fasting was a test of righteousness. Food was never just food. It was always tied to worthiness. And my body internalized that. Food is a threat. Hunger is dangerous. Eating is survival. Eating can be a sin. And then there were time decisions where exhaustion was normalized as righteousness. The Mormon Church taught me that time and rest were not my choices to make. The Doctrine and Covenants says in section 64, verse 33, be not weary in well-doing. It doesn't say listen to your body and do the best you can. Alma, Book of Mormon, 37, verse 34, teach them to never be weary of good works. And then Gordon B. Hinckley, of course, the best cure for weariness is helping someone who's even more tired. Code for ignore your body's exhaustion. Your body's exhaustion is not real. Your need for rest is selfish. Ignore your fatigue. Serve more. How many callings did I hold while exhausted? How many times did I say yes when my body screamed no? How many times did I feel guilty or shame for being tired, believing it made me not righteous enough if my fatigue made me want to stop? This is bodily override theology. And it wired my nervous system to ignore fatigue signals as a survival strategy. Even after I left the church 2 weeks ago, I worked 3 12-hour days in a row and didn't stop until my blood sugar spiked to scary levels because underneath all of my religious deconstruction, a lingering belief still remained. If I want to be blessed, quote unquote, for my efforts, I want to be able to support myself, I have to exhaust myself first. It's a lie that I've held in my body for way too long. And thankfully, this nervous system unwind has shown me something different. I can trust myself to provide for myself without driving my body beyond the limits of my health. Let's talk about gift giving. That's a big one for me. I learned that I needed to buy love to stay safe. So I bought gifts for people because I thought it might help me be loved. Let that sink in. I wasn't giving from generosity. I was giving from fear. Fear that if I didn't give enough, prove enough, perform enough, I wouldn't be loved. I wouldn't belong. I wouldn't be safe. That's not generosity, where gifts should come from. That's survival. Let's also talk about financial decisions, because I believe that scarcity became wired into my nervous system. The church promised that if you follow the rules and pay your tithing, God will bless you with financial prosperity. It's in the Book of Mormon. It's a pattern that gets described in the Book of Mormon again and again and again. But what actually happened was this. I developed a lifelong terror that in my older years, I would be homeless, even though I had resources, even though I had education and professional skills, even though I've never been homeless. That fear lived in my body and drove every financial decision I made until 4 days ago. The unwinding of my nervous system released that fear. I don't have that fear in my body anymore. Not because my circumstances changed, but because my nervous system stopped treating money as a survival threat. So many times throughout my life, it's in the church, not having enough money or dealing with the fear of not being able to pay bills, but I paid my tithing anyway. Right? Money was a survival threat. Paying fast offerings. Believing that if I did that, somehow ends would meet. When your nervous system is dysregulated, when you're living in chronic survival activation, you can't make free choices. You can only make survival decisions. Clothing becomes armor, not self-expression. Food becomes threat assessment, not nourishment. Time becomes performance metrics, not a sacred rhythm. Gifts become bargaining chips, not expressions of love. Money becomes proof of safety or reaching for safety, not a tool for flourishing. And you can't rest because rest feels like dying. This is what abuse and religious control does. It wires your nervous system for chronic threat. And then your body makes every decision from that place of fear. Here's what I know now that I didn't know before. You cannot reclaim freedom while your nervous system is still wired for survival. You can recognize the abuse. You can name the control. You can intellectually understand what was done to you. But until your body feels safe, until your nervous system resets, you can't actually make free choices, because your dysregulated body will keep making survival decisions for you. That's why my 4-day reset mattered so much. It wasn't just physical. It was the reclamation of choice itself. Now, when I get dressed, I'm choosing self-expression, not survival. Now, when I eat, I'm responding to hunger, not fear. And food tastes so different from how it tasted before, by the way, so much better. Now, when I rest, I'm honoring my body's wisdom, not performing productivity. Now, when I give, it's from overflow, not bargaining. Now, the way I use money is from sovereignty, not scarcity. This is what freedom feels like. This nervous system reset is also becoming the heart of the work I'm now teaching inside my new 12-week Inner Light Longevity Reset program. So how do you reclaim freedom in daily life decisions after decades of survival-driven choices? First, recognize that your body has been making survival decisions and not authentic choices. Let's try this right now. Put your hand on your heart and say this out loud. My body has been trying to keep me safe, and now I'm ready to help it feel safe. This isn't your fault. Your nervous system adapted to chronic threat. It did what it needed to do to survive. Now you can teach it that survival mode is no longer necessary. Second, start tracking your daily decisions with curiosity, not judgment. For the next week, notice. What am I wearing and why? Is it self-expression or survival? What am I eating and why? Is this hunger or fear? How am I spending my time? Is it my choice or am I following a compulsion? When do I say yes when my body wants to say no? When do I override my fatigue to keep performing? I would recommend that you don't try to change anything yet. Just notice. Third, practice one regulation technique per day. Choose one. Diaphragmatic breathing before bed. Just lie on the floor. Make sure that your exhales are longer than your inhales, and do it with belly breathing so that when you breathe in, your stomach is expanding, and when you let the air out, your tummy collapses just like as if you have a balloon in your belly. Or do some morning movement with gentle yoga. Just 20 minutes will help your body release stored activation. Or get a weighted blanket or a pet who will lay with you and co-regulate so that you're experiencing parasympathetic activation through deep pressure. Another option is using an infrared sauna or a warm bath because heat helps regulate the nervous system. Your body will tell you what it needs. I encourage you to listen. Fourth, give yourself permission to rest without earning it. Say out loud, rest is not a reward for exhaustion. Rest is my birthright. Take a nap without guilt. Say no to a request without justification. Lie down in the middle of the day just because your body asked you to. If If you're like me, your body has been screaming for decades. It's time to listen. Fifth, notice when your body releases. It could be crying, shaking, trembling, yawning, sighing, muscle spasms. They're not breakdowns. These are breakthroughs. When you get to this place, your body will be letting go of stored survival activation. Don't stop it. Don't pathologize it. Don't be afraid of it. Lean in. This is healing. It's healing that many people often don't talk about. Here's what I know in my bones. After 59 years of survival mode and 4 days of reset, the divine does not require your exhaustion. God is not served by your dysregulation. True spiritual intimacy requires embodied presence. And you cannot be present in your body when your nervous system is stuck in survival mode. And I cannot tell you. So it's so funny because when I was stuck in survival mode, I wanted to do all of the things, right? All of the things that make you more regulated. But survival mode felt frozen and scary, and it kept my body hard and rigid. But as soon as this unwinding began, the unwinding feels so good. Even if it's strange, it feels so good that the ease and comfort that I experienced after it began was enough to motivate me to keep going, to maintain this softened state in my body. It's really phenomenal. I've never felt better in my life. And the wonderful thing is that with the markers that are showing reduced inflammation, reduced cortisol, reduced, what's that other? Adrenaline in my body, a softened face. With all of that being true, life feels better. Sleep is more nourishing. Relationships feel more supportive. There's more joy. So if your spiritual path taught you to override your body's wisdom, to ignore your fatigue, and make decisions from fear, that wasn't devotion. That was control. God gave you a body with exquisite wisdom, with hunger signals, with fatigue cues, with intuitive knowing about what feels safe and what doesn't. Learning to listen to your body again, that's not selfish. That's sacred. For 59 years, I thought I was making choices, but I was living in survival mode. And my dysregulated nervous system was making decisions for me. 4 days. That's all it took for my body to show me what freedom feels like. Not intellectual freedom, not theoretical freedom. Embodied nervous system level freedom. The kind of freedom where you can feel hunger clearly, where stress doesn't spike your glucose, where neighbors who ignored you suddenly want to talk, where rest feels safe instead of terrifying. This is what reclaiming your daily life decisions looks like. Not just recognizing the abuse, not just naming the control, but resetting your nervous system so your body can finally make choices from safety instead of fear. So I'd like to welcome you back to your body's wisdom. Welcome back to embodied choice. The divine has been waiting for you to feel safe in your body all along. If this episode resonated with you, I'd love to hear your story. What daily decisions have you been making from survival instead of choice? Send me a DM on IG or Facebook. I read and respond to every message. And if you're ready to go deeper into nervous system reset and reclaiming your freedom, I'm creating a 12-week nervous system reset intensive for post-religious seekers and women who want to thrive later in life after jumping through all of the hoops that separate you from your body. Email me at tamara@innerlightcompanion.com if you want early access. This Friday is episode 17, and it's about financial freedom and autonomy when religious control wires your nervous system for scarcity. Until then, keep listening to your body. Keep noticing your survival patterns and keep practicing regulation. You're not alone in this. Thanks for listening. As you step into your day, notice which intimacies stirred for you, and then choose one small practice and let it meet you where you are. You want support? Grab the free Sacred Intimacy Snapshot, and when you're ready, the full Sacred Intimacy Assessment that can guide your next steps. Links are in the show notes. Until next time, walk gently, listen deeply, and trust the light within.